35,000 feet above the Atlantic. A pregnant woman gasps for air. A first-class cabin spirals into panic. No doctor on board. No time left. And in the back of the plane, a 17-year-old black boy in a faded hoodie stands up. He isn't a doctor. He's never left the country. But he knows what's happening, because he's lived it, because he's had to. What happens next will change not only the fate of a billionaire's family, but the life of a boy raised by his grandmother in a forgotten part of the city. What did he see that no one else did? What did he ask for in return that made one of the richest men in America cry? And why did this moment become the beginning of something far bigger than any of them could imagine? This is more than a rescue story. It's a story of humanity, challenged, redefined, and reborn. Before we dive in, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories that reveal the power of connection in the most unexpected places. Now let's begin. The boarding line for Flight 792 curved like a human river through Terminal 7. People shifted their weight impatiently, clutching coffee cups and wheeled luggage, faces lit by phones or dimmed by exhaustion. Malik Dawson stood near the back of Group 4 Fingers, lightly tracing the edges of the boarding pass in his jacket pocket. His palms were sweating, not from nerves, at least not entirely. He had studied every part of this journey, the terminal map, the flight duration, even the exact gate to find once he landed in Geneva. But no part of the preparation could steady the quiet storm inside his chest. This was his first flight, and his first time leaving the country, and his only shot. In his backpack well worn, with a stitched-up strap rested a folder of carefully printed documents, recommendation letters, research essays, a permission slip signed by his Uncle Reggie in loopy handwriting that barely held between the tremors, and taped to the inside cover, a quote his late mother once wrote in the back of his anatomy textbook. "You were born to breathe life into others. Baby, you've already saved mine." He pressed the folder close to his chest as the boarding agent called out his group. 38 Bravo, middle seat, between a snoring insurance adjuster and a college student in wireless headphones. Malik sank into the space, adjusting the neck pillow he'd borrowed from the community center donation bin the day before. He glanced around at the other passengers, locked in their own world of carry-ons and quiet judgments. He could still hear his uncle's voice from that morning. "Take pictures from the sky for me." "Yeah," Reggie had said, grinning through foggy glasses, a spoon trembling midair over his oatmeal. "You're gonna be sitting higher than all of us today." Malik had smiled back, even though his stomach had been twisting since dawn, not from fear of flying, from the fear of not being seen once he arrived. He'd read the list of candidates for the International Health Innovators Symposium at least a dozen times. Kids from private academies, some already published in journals, some from places with names like Haverly or Andover. He'd be the only one from a public school in East Oakland, possibly the only one who had washed his uniform shirt in the sink 2 nights ago, up in first class. A different kind of storm was brewing. Isabel Thornfield rested a manicured hand across the crest of her belly, the soft curve of pregnancy barely concealed by a silk blouse. She adjusted the recline on her seat, then checked her watch. 2 minutes behind schedule. Beside her, Graham Thornfield flipped through emails on his tablet with the flick of someone used to commanding attention in boardrooms. "Champagne, Mr. Thornfield," the attendant asked. "No, thank you," he replied, then turned to Isabel with a softer tone. Water for you. Love. She nodded faintly. There was a pinch of tension in her forehead that hadn't left since they'd boarded. She blamed it on the jet lag she hadn't earned yet, on the fatigue. On the way, the baby had kicked a little too hard when they took off her heels back at the lounge. But she didn't mention it to Graham. Not now. Not after everything it had taken to make it this far this late in life. This pregnancy was a miracle, and she wouldn't let her body's betrayals steal that from her. Back in 38B, Malik pulled out a rubber-banded stack of flashcards, symptoms of embolism, signs of cyanosis, protocols for unconscious patient care. Most people watched movies during long-haul flights. Malik reviewed symptoms. He wasn't just doing this for the symposium. He was doing it for the man who raised him, the man slowly forgetting his name. The cabin lights dimmed as the plane angled into the dusky sky. For a moment, Malik allowed himself to rest his head against the seat. A small breath, then a cough from somewhere up front, short but sharp. He didn't think much of it, not yet. Outside the oval window, the Atlantic stretched endlessly beneath them. Above it, somewhere near row 3A, a woman's hand would soon clutch her chest in silence, and someone would call for a doctor, but not look toward Malik, not at first, but everything would change. At 36,000 feet, the hum of the plane settled into the background like a distant tide. Trays clicked shut, cabin lights shifted into a warm dusk. Somewhere near the front, a bottle of wine was being uncorked. Somewhere near the back, a baby started crying softly, and in seat 38B, Malik Dawson shifted his foot, revealing a worn sole coming loose from the edge of his left sneaker. He tugged the fabric of his jeans down a little to hide it. Not that anyone was watching, but old habits died hard. He looked down at his hands, steady, clean, but marked with calluses, the kind that come from pushing grocery carts and lifting his uncle from the tub, from opening pill bottles with a coin when the caps got stuck, from balancing homework with medical appointments and rides on the Bashed 73 bus through East Oakland. There wasn't a part of him that hadn't been shaped by necessity, by care. 3 years ago, when his mother died, Uncle Reggie had just started forgetting little things. Keys, grocery lists, street names, nothing serious at first. You're just tired. Unc, Malik used to say, sitting beside him on the porch with a glass of warm lemonade between them. But then he forgot Malik's birthday. Then the year, then the name of the medicine he'd taken for 2 decades. And one night, during a power outage, he locked himself outside barefoot in the rain, convinced it was 1997 and he had a night shift at the hospital. That was when Malik stopped being a kid. He picked up his flashcards again, flipping through familiar terms: PE pulmonary embolism, symptoms, chest pain, sudden shortness of breath, cyanosis, elevated heart rate, swelling in one leg, higher risk pregnancy, prolonged immobility, air travel. His fingers paused on that last line, air travel. He looked up, past the overhead bins, toward the soft partition separating economy from business class. It was only curtains, thin fabric, sliding on a rail, but it might as well have been a brick wall. In row 2A, Isabel Thornfield pressed her fingers gently against her sternum. Just beneath the silk, her chest fluttered, tight and unfamiliar. She shifted in her reclined seat, inhaling deeply through her nose, trying not to show the slight panic rising beneath her ribs. It wasn't pain exactly, more like pressure. The baby kicked once, then twice, strong, too strong. She turned slightly toward Graham, who was now lost in a long thread of emails about a merger with an AI healthcare startup in Zurich. "Graham," she whispered. He looked up instantly. "What is it? You need water?" "No, I'm fine," she said, smiling faintly. "Just a little dizzy." He frowned. "You sure it's not another Braxton Hicks thing?" She nodded, but the smile didn't quite reach her eyes. She hated worrying him, especially after everything. They had lost 2 pregnancies before. The second had nearly broken them. This one they had dared to hope for. At 39, she had faced an uphill battle: hormones, injections, appointments that always felt like negotiations between biology and time. Now she was finally 27 weeks in, just beyond the line where doctors say a baby might survive if born early. Barely. Isabel pressed her hand gently to her abdomen. She would not lose this child. Not after everything. Back in 38B. Malik was staring at a sleeping passenger's tray table where someone had left a copy of Forbes folded open. The headline read, "Graham Thornfield to receive Global Impact Award in Geneva. Healthcare is our most valuable investment." Malik blinked. That name, Thornfield, he remembered it from the gate. The couple who walked in with matching luggage and an attendant who carried a leather coat like it was holy scripture. That woman. She'd looked unwell even then, pale, slow-moving, but no one had noticed. And why would they? She was first class. She had people to notice for her. He leaned back in his seat, eyelids heavy, but his mind still alert. Malik thought of Uncle Reggie's quiet chant from the night before, "Stay sharp." Kid. The body always whispers before it screams. Those words would soon come back to him, because somewhere in the front of the plane, the body was beginning to whisper, and no one was listening. Yet, 30,000 feet up, the world below blurred into darkness. The seatbelt light blinked off with a gentle chime. Passengers rustled in their seats. A baby's cry faded into rhythmic white noise, and from the galley, the faint aroma of reheated pasta began to drift. Malik Dawson sat upright in his seat in economy, his eyes scanning the laminated emergency procedure card tucked into the seat pocket. Not because he needed to know, but because it gave his hands something to do, a way to burn the nervous energy he refused to show. He had the quiet, focused stillness of someone who'd had to act like a grown man since he was 13. People like that didn't fidget. They waited, they watched, up front, beyond the curtain that might as well have been made of concrete. Isabel Thornfield pressed the service button with a trembling hand. The ache had returned, this time deeper, like her lungs were being wrapped in something heavy and invisible. She shifted in her seat and drew a shallow breath, then another. Her chest felt tight, and worse foreign, as if her own body had become unrecognizable in this pressurized sky. Graham was still typing, and for once, she didn't want to disturb him, but her heart was thudding now, too fast. "Excuse me," she said softly to the passing flight attendant, a woman with tired eyes and a practiced smile. "Yes, ma'am, I think something's wrong. I can't catch my breath." In the galley, flight attendant Joyce Ortega felt the ground drop out from under her metaphorically. Of course, they were over the North Atlantic, 4 hours from London, 2.5 from the nearest diversion airport. "Can you tell me more?" "Ma'am, when did this start?" Isabel tried to speak, but her words came in broken phrases, just pressure, hard to breathe. Joyce's training kicked in. She checked Isabel's pulse, Fast. Thready. She reached for the oxygen mask. I'm going to get the first aid kit. We'll page for a doctor. She turned back toward the intercom, her heart thumping. Malik was half dozing when the voice came over the speaker. If there's a medical professional on board, please make yourself known to a flight attendant immediately. We have a passenger experiencing a medical emergency in the forward cabin. Heads turned. Sleepy murmurs rose. The soft edges of comfort dissolved into alertness. Malik sat up straight. His eyes darted toward the front. Medical emergency. Forward cabin. A flash of memory struck his flashcard from earlier. PE, pulmonary embolism, air travel, pregnancy. His breath caught. It couldn't be. He reached under the seat, grabbing his backpack, heart pounding now. He stood. The flight attendant from earlier, Gloria, he remembered now, spotted him and raised a hand. Sir, please remain seated. Malik didn't sit. I'm not a doctor, he said, but I think I know what's happening. Back in first class, Graham hovered over his wife, watching as her lips turned pale, almost bluish. Isabel. Baby, talk to me. She shook her head, eyes wide. The oxygen mask covered her face now, but her breaths were still shallow, still ragged. Joyce returned with another flight attendant, this one younger and visibly shaken. They had the med kit. They had no doctor. We need to elevate her legs, Malik said firmly, appearing at the edge of first class like a shadow emerging from fog. Joyce turned. Sir, I told you, pulmonary embolism. Malik said louder. Has she had swelling in one leg recently? Pain in her calf. Graham's head snapped around. Yes, left leg. She said it was pregnancy swelling. Malik nodded. That's how it starts. He knelt beside Isabel, speaking softly through the oxygen mask. You're going to be okay. We're going to help you breathe. There was a moment, tense, tangled, silent, where everyone on that plane had to choose to trust a teenage boy in a thrifted hoodie or to keep waiting for a doctor who wasn't there. Malik's voice broke the silence. Do you have aspirin in the med kit? Yes, Joyce said, slowly opening the flap. And oxygen is flowing. Give her one now, and check if there's heparin. The younger attendant whispered to Graham. He shouldn't be here, but Graham was watching Malik's hands, how steady they were, how naturally he lifted Isabel's feet and braced them on a rolled blanket, how he murmured to her gently, like she was the only one who mattered. Who are you? Graham asked, his voice thin with disbelief and desperation. My name's Malik Dawson, he said, meeting the man's eyes without fear. I'm 17. I'm not a doctor, but I've helped treat this before, and if we wait, she might not make it to the hospital. Silence fell again, not the kind that stretches, the kind that decides. Graham's face hardened, then softened. Do whatever you have to do. The cabin was no longer a place of sleep or quiet. It had become a waiting room between hope and disaster. The hum of the engines faded under the sharper, human sounds, gasps, whispers, distant weeping from someone who sensed things might be worse than they looked. And, in the middle of it all, Malik Dawson knelt on the floor of first class, his palms sweating despite the calm in his voice. He was operating on instinct and memory, now reciting medical facts from flashcards, drawing strength from nights caring for Uncle Reggie, from hours spent by hospital beds where no one had time to explain anything except how not to panic. Is she conscious? He asked. Barely, Joyce replied, watching the pulse oximeter on Isabel's finger. Oxygen 84%. Not good. Too low. The baby needed air, too, and time was running out. In his peripheral vision, Malik could see Graham Thornfield staring at him, this tall, clean-shaven man in a tailored travel jacket with a six-figure watch. Malik didn't meet his gaze. He couldn't. Not because he was afraid, because he was afraid he might start shaking if he did. Don't think about it. Don't think about how he looked at you when you stepped into first class, like you didn't belong. Don't think about how you nearly sat back down, how your voice almost cracked when you said the words pulmonary embolism. Just breathe. Just act. Sir, we've contacted the captain, Joyce said. He's considering an emergency diversion. Where are we now? Malik asked. Closest option is Keflavik, Iceland, about 90 minutes. Malik closed his eyes for half a second. 90 minutes. He remembered the stat from a video he'd watched last year. A severe PE can cause death in under an hour. He turned to Graham. Mr. Thornfield, I need you to understand, this is serious. We're doing everything we can with what we have. But she needs a hospital. Now. I know, Graham said softly, his voice cracking. What do you need support? Malik replied. Keep her calm. Talk to her. Touch her hand. Remind her she's not alone. Isabel's eyes fluttered open briefly. Her breath hitched. Her lips moved. Malik leaned close. She was whispering something. He strained to hear. The baby. The baby's okay, Malik said firmly, though he didn't know for sure. The fetal monitor wasn't built into this kit. No Doppler, no ultrasound. Just his voice, steady and soft. You're okay. He's okay. We're going to get you there. He turned to Joyce again. Aspirin's down. Yes, 5 minutes ago. We need to elevate her torso slightly, help lung expansion, and keep her warm. She's starting to lose color. Joyce nodded, moving fast now. She didn't question him anymore, because somewhere in the chaos, Malik had become something more than a passenger. He had become the only bridge between Isabel Thornfield and the other side of this flight. But even as he focused on the steps, on vitals, on everything that needed to happen next, his mind began to spiral. You're not a doctor. What if you're wrong? What if she dies? You don't belong here. The thought hit him hard, not from the passengers, from inside. That old voice, the one that lived in school hallways and store security lines in the eyes of every stranger who clutched their purse too tight. You're 17. Black, poor, from East Oakland. Who's going to believe you belong here? He felt it rising, that storm inside. But then Joyce touched his shoulder, a silent thank you, a silent keep going. And Graham said quietly, What now? What's next? That was when Malik stood taller. Not because the doubt was gone, but because he had decided not to listen to it anymore. He looked down at Isabel, who was still trying to breathe, still holding on, and he whispered to her like he used to whisper to Uncle Reggie in the worst moments, You're not leaving today. Not like this. You've got a baby to hold. You've got a life to live. Then, with a calm he didn't feel but knew he had to show, he turned back to the crew and said, Let's prepare for emergency landing. We may not have 90 minutes. The lights in the cabin flickered briefly, just turbulence, the kind most passengers wouldn't even notice. But in first class, where time was now measured in heartbeats and oxygen levels, every flicker, every tremor felt magnified. Graham Thornfield leaned over his wife, whispering her name over and over like a prayer he didn't believe in until now. Isabel's chest rose shallowly, Her eyes were closed, her fingers limp. The oxygen mask hissed in rhythm, but her color hadn't returned. "Her pulse is dropping," Joyce said, her voice tight now. Malik didn't respond. He was watching Isabel's hand your wedding ring slipping just slightly loose over her knuckle. That tiny detail, somehow, hit him hardest. "She's fading." He pulled the blanket higher over her legs, rechecked her elevation, then turned toward the front of the plane. "We need the captain, now." Minutes later, the intercom buzzed softly. "This is your captain speaking. This is Captain Lowell. We are diverting to Keflavik Airport in Iceland. Estimated time to landing, 1 hour and 22 minutes. Too long, Malik thought, but it was all they had, back in his own body. Malik felt the tension tightening like wire under his skin. He wanted to scream, not because he was afraid, but because this wasn't supposed to be his burden. He was just a kid headed to a scholarship interview, just a kid who studied flashcards and shadowed nurses. Not a doctor, not a hero. And yeah, there he was, alone at 36,000 feet, shouldering someone else's life while the world watched in silence. He wondered what they'd say if this ended badly. Would they blame him? Would they say he shouldn't have intervened? He wasn't qualified. Would they say the quiet part out loud? Across the cabin, someone whispered. "Isn't there a real doctor?" Another replied. Their trust in that kid Malek didn't turn around, but Graham did. He stood suddenly, his voice slicing through the whispers like a scalpel. "Sit down." A few passengers jumped. The person helping my wife is the only one who stepped forward, and if you can't do better than sit there and judge, then kindly shut up. The cabin fell quiet. Graham sat back down, looked at Malik. Their eyes met. Something passed between them. Not apology, not yet, but recognition. Joyce returned with a foil packet and a small device. Pulse ox still low, but she's responsive to stimuli. That's something. Malik nodded. We need to keep her stimulated. Talk to her. Keep her conscious if we can. Graham leaned close to Isabel. "Remember that name we couldn't agree on," he whispered. "For the baby, I still think Lila wins." Isabel didn't open her eyes, but her lip twitched slightly. Malik saw it, that flicker, still in there. He slumped back for a breath. Felt the ache in his knees, felt the ache in his chest, and then the ache in his past. A hospital hallway, a doctor who wouldn't speak to him, nurses who only looked at his uncle, never at him. No one had listened when he said the swelling wasn't normal. By the time they did, Uncle Reggie was gone. There's this moment, this woman. He wasn't going to lose her too, but part of him still whispered, "What if you do?" That voice grew louder. It said, "You'll carry that forever." "Malik," Joyce said gently. He looked up. "I know this isn't what you signed up for, but you're the reason she's still alive right now." He nodded, didn't speak, because speaking meant crying, and crying wasn't allowed. Not up here, not now. Then, from the far side of first class, a movement. Someone had crossed the curtain. A woman, mid-40s, sharp blazer, airline pin on her collar. "Mr. Dawson," she said. "I'm Susan Geller. I'm the corporate safety officer on board. We've been monitoring things. I need to document who provided care." Malik blinked. "Document its protocol. Just your name and background. We're not making any assumptions. Just need to." Graham stood again, He's a damn hero. That's all you need to document." Susan hesitated. "Sir, please understand, no." Graham cut in. "You listen." He pointed toward Malik. "Get his name, and then get out of his way." Susan left without another word. Joyce looked shaken. And Malik? Malik just stared down at his trembling hands. He wasn't afraid of being documented. He was afraid of being blamed. The cabin was dim again. The emergency lights glowed soft amber. The mood no longer fear, not quite hope either. It was something in between, like the still air before a storm changes course. Isabel Thornfield was no longer gasping. Her breathing had steadied slightly. The aspirin, the oxygen, the elevation, it was working, for now. But Malik knew the truth. They weren't out of the woods. They were just walking slower toward the edge. Joyce sat across from Isabel now, quietly timing her respiration. Malik sat beside Graham, his back against the bulkhead wall, his legs pulled to his chest, arms wrapped around them. He was finally still. Not because he was calm, but because his body had reached its limit. "You okay?" Graham asked. Malik nodded without looking up. "Need water, food?" "I'm good, sir. Thank you." There was a long pause. The silence between them didn't feel tense anymore. It felt waiting. Then Graham said quietly, "When this is over, they'll write about this. News, reports, blogs. You'll be the kid who saved a billionaire's wife on a plane." Malik said nothing. Graham leaned in. "But what's your name gonna mean to them?" That got a reaction. Malik lifted his head. "They'll get it wrong," he said flatly. "They always do. Say I was older, or someone else, or that it was luck." He looked out the window. "People like me don't usually get credit unless we're playing basketball or dying on the news." Graham flinched. Malik noticed. He didn't mean it as a knife. It was just the truth. Cold, real, lived. "You know," Malik said, voice low, "the first time someone ever called me sir was a nurse. In the ER, after Uncle Reggie passed out, she thought I was 25 because of my voice. I was 14. Graham stared. She asked me if I was his caseworker. Malik smiled bitterly. "Guess I was." There was a silence. Not awkward, just heavy. "Weighty," Graham finally said. "You said, Uncle Reggie." "What happened?" Malik shrugged. "Congestive heart failure. COPD. He ignored the signs for too long. We didn't have good insurance. I learned what I could. I helped him until the end." His hands flexed open and closed, studied while he slept, practiced taking vitals. "It was just us. After my mom passed." Graham closed his eyes. "My God, my grandma's all I've got now," Malik said. He looked up, "and she doesn't even know what's happening right now." Graham hesitated. "Use my phone." Malik blinked. "What?" "Use mine. Make a call. Wi-Fi calling works sometimes over the Atlantic." Malik stared at the polished black screen Graham handed him. For a moment, he didn't move. Then he took it. In a quiet voice, he recited a number from memory and waited. One ring, two, then a familiar voice. "Hello, grandmate's me." There was a pause. "Malik, baby, where are you? Did you land?" He swallowed the knot in his throat. "Not yet. Something happened. But I'm okay. I'm safe. I helped someone. Grandma, on the flight, a woman got sick. Oh, Lord. Are you all right? You're not in trouble." "No, ma'am. Just tired. But she's doing better now. I just wanted you to know I'm doing what you always told me to." Another pause. Then, softly, I'm proud of you, baby. Malik closed his eyes. I love you, Grandma. Love you more. Call me when you land. All right. He ended the call, hands trembling, but lighter. Graham was watching him. She sounds strong. She raised me, Malik said simply. They sat in silence again. But it was different now, like something had shifted. Not just between them, but inside Graham. I used to think the world ran on merit, Graham said suddenly. Work hard, get rewarded, that sort of thing. He sighed, but I never had to prove I belonged every time I walked in a room. Malik turned to him, surprised. People think privilege is about money, Graham continued. And yeah, it is, but it's also about being believed, about being listened Toby default. He looked down, and I didn't listen to you, not at first, and that I'll carry. Malik said nothing, just gave a single nod, not forgiveness, not yet, but acknowledgement. Then Joyce approached. Her voice was low but firm. She's stable for now, but the baby's in distress. We can't wait another hour. Malik stood. What do you mean, I mean? She looked at him. We need to push the captain again, harder. The cockpit door felt miles away. Joyce stood in front of it, her arms folded tight, her back straight, her jaw clenched. I don't care what the policy says, she said, voice low but firm. She needs immediate care. The baby's heart rate is dropping. The junior flight officer, all nervous, maybe mid-30s, stood between her and the captain's reinforced door, shaking his head. The captain is following FAA diversion protocol. Iceland is the closest airport with advanced neonatal capacity. He cannot land and Greenland it, lacks the resources. He's already pushing speed limits. Malik approached slowly. He'd heard everything. He felt it in his chest like static. She has maybe 45 minutes, Joyce whispered, turning toward him. That baby doesn't have time for strategy. Malik looked at the cockpit door, then back at Isabel, then at Graham. Graham stood motionless beside his wife's seat, hands clenched into fists at his sides, jaw trembling. He looked older now, smaller somehow. Isabel lay still, her pulse ox monitor blinking faintly. Red, red, red. Malik stepped forward. Let me talk to him. The flight officer blinked. What? The captain. Let me talk to him directly. Not as a passenger, not as a kid. As someone who understands what's happening back there, the officer hesitated. Graham's voice rang out. Let him. Another pause. Then the door unlocked. A soft click. Inside the cockpit, Malik was hit with a wave of low-lit screens, flashing radar, and the rhythmic murmur of engine data. Two pilots sat in high-backed chairs, headphones on, calm voices trading codes with air traffic control. Captain Lowell, gray hair, deep lines, weathered confidence, glanced back. This better be good, he muttered. Malik stepped inside, heart pounding. Sir, he began. My name is Malik Dawson. I'm 17. I'm not a doctor, but I've been monitoring a patient in row 1A Isabel Thornfield. The captain raised an eyebrow. The Thornfield family first-class emergency. Yes, sir. It's a pulmonary embolism. Oxygen and aspirin have stabilized her for now, but the fetus is in distress. The baby's vitals are worsening by the minute. Iceland is too far. Captain Lowell didn't respond immediately. He studied the dials. We already checked Greenland. There's no NICU. I'm not asking for Greenland, Malik said quietly. I'm asking for permission to radio and a medical consultation. I know someone. In Boston. He's a trauma OB. He owes me a favor." The co-pilot turned. "You know a trauma OB who owes you a favor?" Malik shrugged. "Sort of. He trained under someone my uncle knew. I've done research work with his assistant. He'll take the call." Captain Lowell's gaze narrowed. "Son, I appreciate what you've done. I really do. But this isn't a science project. If we make a wrong move, we risk both lives." Malik didn't blink. "I understand. But if we don't do anything, we still risk both lives. Only then we'll be sure who failed." There was silence. Then slowly, the captain handed Malik the radio. "Make your call." 10 minutes later. "Doctor." Calvin Rice's steady voice crackled through the cockpit radio. He'd reviewed the vitals Joyce had transmitted. His verdict, "You're losing the baby." Maybe both. You need to land anywhere that can stabilize a clot and monitor neonatal vitals. Forget Iceland. Turn back. Boston is 3 hours away, too far. Divert east. A pause. Then contact St. Brigid's in Ireland. They've got both departments on standby. Captain Lowell looked over at Malik. A beat passed. Done. The plane banked left. An announcement echoed through the cabin. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. We are making an unscheduled emergency landing at St. Brigid's Airfield in Ireland. Estimated arrival in 58 minutes, in first class." Malik emerged from the cockpit to the sudden relief on Joyce's face and the raw disbelief in Graham's eyes. "You did it." Malik nodded. "I didn't do it alone." Isabel stirred then. A tiny movement. Malik rushed to her side. "Ma'am," he said softly, "we're landing sooner. You're going to make it. Just stay with us. Your daughter's waiting." Isabel's lips moved. No sound. But the word Lila. Graham exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for hours. He looked at Malik, and in his face was something new. Not gratitude, not respect, but awe. The runway was drenched in morning mist. Gray skies met steel tarmac, and the wind howled like something ancient. Flight 327 hit the ground hard. No announcement could hide the thump, the gasp from the cabin, or the sudden lurch forward that sent loose cups tumbling from trays. But no one cared. They were down, and Isabel Thornfield was still breathing. Emergency crews were waiting. Yellow jackets, stretcher wheels, medical jargon moving faster than wind. Malik stood back as they swarmed her. They took vitals, listened, lifted, moved, all in less than 3 minutes. Then Isabel was gone, rolled through the open door and into the waiting ambulance. Malik stood at the top of the air stairs, wind in his hoodie, staring at the empty tarmac where the flashing lights had vanished. He felt like a balloon with the air let out. Not deflated, just floating now, with no direction. Graham stepped beside him. "I should have carried her." His voice cracked. Malik didn't respond. He didn't know what to say. Not to a man who'd flown private jets all his life, but couldn't carry his own wife down 5 stairs. "She said the baby's name," Malik finally murmured. Graham looked up. "Lila." A quiet moment passed. The plane's crew moved passengers into the small Irish terminal, their voices polite but tight with adrenaline. Malik followed slowly. He wasn't sure what he was supposed to do anymore. He wasn't a passenger, wasn't a doctor, just the kid in the hoodie who'd spoken up when no one else would. And now the adrenaline was gone. All that was left was waiting. Inside the terminal, the sterile white walls made Malik's skin itch. The vending machines blinked like neon regret. Joyce sat beside him, a paper cup of weak tea in her hands. "You did more than anyone," she said quietly. He stared ahead. Not enough. "You were 17, she added. So Joyce tilted her head. "You say that like it's irrelevant." Malik blinked hard. "She might still die, so might the baby. And that interview, it's gone. London's gone. That was my shot." His voice cracked, just a little. Joyce didn't speak. Not right away. Then, gently, "There will be other interviews." "No," Malik said, "there won't." She looked at him sharply. "You don't know that." He turned toward her, his face tight. "I do. They only do in-person interviews. Age limit's 18. This was my last chance." Joyce's mouth opened, closed. No cliché felt right. So she said nothing, just sat beside him in silence. Across the room, Graham paced. He had called the hospital 5 times already. No update. He stared at his phone as though it might bleed the truth if he looked hard enough. He looked broken. Not the rich kind of broken PR scandal or stock plunge. The real kind. The kind that changes the shape of a man's soul. Eventually, he approached Malik again, sat beside him without speaking for a while. Then, "Why didn't you say anything?" Malik glanced at him. "About the program, the interview, what it cost you." A shrug. What would have been the point? She was the priority. Graham shook his head. "You gave up everything." "I didn't give it up. I chose." Malik's voice was calm, and that shook Graham more than anger ever could. "Do you know what I used to believe?" Graham asked. "That life is fair, that money evens the odds." He chuckled bitterly. "I paid for the best prenatal care, flew my wife first class, had a doctor on standby in London." He looked at Malik, "But it was you, a kid from where? Creston Hill." Malik replied, "Creston Hill." Graham repeated, "You saved her?" Malik said nothing, because saying "you're welcome" would have cheapened it. Then the nurse entered, her uniform clean, face unreadable. She walked straight to them. Mr. Thornfield Graham stood instantly. "Yes, she's stable. Both of them. She's asking for you. And for Malik." The world paused. "She remembers Malik asked." The nurse nodded. She said, "Find that young man, the one who stayed." Graham turned toward him. "She wants to see you." Malik hesitated. His feet were ready. His heart wasn't. Joyce touched his shoulder. "You earned this." Malik stood slowly. He wasn't sure what came next. But somehow, he knew he'd walk into that hospital room with more than just knowledge. He'd walk in with a name, one that mattered. The hospital corridors were quiet, too quiet, that antiseptic stillness, broken only by the occasional beep of distant monitors and the shuffle of rubber soles on polished floors. Malik followed the nurse in silence. Graham walked beside him, shoulders hunched forward like a man carrying more than his own weight. They passed rooms that glowed dimly, curtains drawn, patients sleeping, lives on pause. Malik felt like an intruder in someone else's dream. And yet, this hallway, this moment, it belonged to him too. At the end of the corridor, a door stood ajar. Room 412. Inside, Isabel Thornfield lay propped up in a hospital bed, pale but alert. Her hand rested on her swollen stomach, and her eyes were waiting. "Malik," she whispered when he entered. Her voice was hoarse, but the warmth was unmistakable. You really came. He stopped short. For a moment, all the medical knowledge, all the calm he'd summoned on that flight vanished. He just stood there, awkward, overwhelmed. 17, I wasn't sure you'd want to see me, he said finally. Isabel smiled faintly. I asked for you, because you didn't just help me. You stayed. Graham stepped forward. She took his hand and pulled him gently down beside her. Her other hand reached toward Malek. He hesitated, then crossed the room and took it. It was warm, soft, alive. Your name saved me, she said. Malik. Her eyes welled with tears. I didn't know what was happening to me up there. I thought I was dying. But then you were there, steady, confident, like you'd done it 100 times. Malik gave a soft laugh. I've never even flown before. They all laughed. Tired laughter, relieved laughter, the kind that comes after you've survived something you didn't think you would. For a long while, no one spoke, just the hum of machines, the shallow rise and fall of breath. Then Isabel's voice returned, quieter. You missed something important, didn't you? Malik nodded. My final interview, medical program in London, would have changed everything. She looked at him. Would it? He blinked. What do you mean? You already changed everything? For me? For Graham? For that baby sleeping inside me? She touched her belly with reverence. You didn't need a program to prove who you are. Malik looked down. His throat tightened. You know what hurts most, he said. It's not the missed opportunity. It's the part of me that keeps wondering if I even belong there in the first place. Graham straightened. Don't say that. Why not? You didn't believe in me when I stood up on that plane. None of you did. Malik's voice shook. I was a kid in a hoodie. Wrong seat, wrong class, wrong everything. Isabel squeezed his hand. You're not wrong. You're real. And that's what saved me. You weren't posturing or waiting for applause. You acted. Graham swallowed hard. He turned toward Malik. I need to say something, and I need you to hear it fully. Malik looked up. I misjudged you. I saw skin and clothes and youth, and I assumed you had nothing to offer. Graham's voice cracked. I was wrong, and if you hadn't spoken up, I would have lost her. I would have buried my wife and unborn daughter. He leaned forward. I will never be able to repay that, but I want to try. Malik looked at him, not with anger, not even with pity, just a kind of tired clarity. You don't owe me anything, he said, but maybe you owe the next kid in a hoodie, the one who won't speak up, the one no one listens to. Silence, and then Graham nodded. I do. A nurse poked her head in. Sorry to interrupt. We'll need to take some more vitals soon. Isabel smiled softly. Of course. Malik turned to leave, but she called after him. Hey, Malik. He paused. When my daughter is born, I want her to meet you. I want her to know the kind of man who saved her life before she ever took her first breath. Malik smiled, and this time it reached all the way to his eyes. I'd like that, ma'am, a lot. He stepped into the hallway, where the light seemed just a little softer now, and the silence no longer felt so empty. The hospital cafeteria was nearly empty, just the hiss of the coffee machine, the scrape of chairs, and the low murmur of two men sitting across from each other. Malik stirred a paper cup of tea he didn't want. Graham, in a tailored blazer over a wrinkled shirt, sat with both elbows on the table, fingers interlaced. I want to talk about what's next. Graham said. Malik didn't look up. I already know what's next. I go home, start over. Graham leaned forward. No, Malik, you don't start over. You keep going, with help. Malik raised his eyes slowly. Help you missed one opportunity. Let's build a better one. Graham reached into his coat pocket and placed a folded document on the table. A letterhead, embossed, official. I called a few people. I've got connections at Penn, Columbia, Northwestern Med. There are pre-med accelerators you qualify for. They're interested. Malik stared at the paper, unmoving. You pulled strings. I opened doors. Graham corrected. What you do with them is up to you. Malik said nothing, but his hands were clenched in his lap, tight, fighting something. I'm not some charity case, he said finally. Graham exhaled. I know. Then why Graham's voice was quiet? Because you showed me who you are when no one was watching. Because I owe the world more than a check. Because you're the kind of person I want my daughter to grow up knowing. Malik's throat worked. He looked at the document again. I don't know if I can trust this. Trust you. A beat. People promise a lot when they're grateful. They forget when it gets inconvenient. Graham nodded. I know. You have every right to question me. But don't turn down something real just because of where it's coming from. Malik looked away. His voice barely a whisper. I'm scared. Graham leaned back, surprised. Of what hope? Malik said. It's heavy when you've carried it alone for so long. Silence. Then Graham said, let me carry some of it with you. Malik looked up. Really looked. And, for the first time, he saw not a millionaire, not a suit, not the man from first class, but a father, a man who nearly lost everything and was trying, in the way he knew how, to give something back. I want something in return, Malik said. Graham straightened. Name it, not for me. For where I live, Creston Hill. He took a breath. There's a community health center, underfunded, understaffed. Same old story. My grandma's waited 6 months for a pulmonologist referral that still hasn't come. Graham nodded slowly. You want me to help fix it? No, Malik replied. I want you to fund it. Fixin' comes later. And I want people from the neighborhood making the decisions, not outsiders with degrees who've never ridden the bus. Graham's mouth curved, just slightly. You drive a hard bargain, Mr. Dawson. Malik shrugged. I learned from the best, he said. You mean your grandma? Malik nodded, smiling for the first time in hours. She'd be negotiating for dental and transportation benefits by now. Graham extended his hand. A full scholarship, housing, mentorship, and a partnership on the health center with your voice leading the charge. Malik stared at the hand, then took it, firm, unflinching. I'll need that in writing, Malik said. Graham grinned. I'd be disappointed if you didn't. Later that night, as Malik called his grandmother from the hospital courtyard, he told her everything. She listened, silent at first. Then she said, I told you, that brain of yours was going to change the world. Malik looked up at the stars. They seemed closer here, clearer, and for the first time, he believed her. It was a cold Sunday afternoon in Creston Hill. The kind of cold that slipped past windowsills and lived in your bones. But inside apartment 4B, warmth came not from the radiator, but from something deeper. Beatrice Dawson had cooked enough food for 10 people. There were greens, cornbread, slow-roasted chicken, and a peach cobbler so fragrant it made the air heavy with memory. Malik paced near the door, glancing at the hallway every few seconds. "They're late," he muttered. "They're rich," Beatrice said, not looking up from her mixing bowl. "Rich folks always think the world waits for them. But let 'em knock. We answer when we're ready." Malik snorted. He needed that. A knock came. Firm, 3 times. Beatrice gave Malik a look. He opened the door. Graham Thornfield stood in a charcoal overcoat, holding a modest basket of fresh fruit and flowers. Beside him, Isabel Herr, belly rounder now. Her coat, buttoned beneath her chin, offered a small wave and a soft smile. Behind them, a young nurse hovered with a compact oxygen tank and a clipboard. "Mr. and Mrs. Thornfield," Malik said. "Welcome to Creston Hill." "No need for titles," Isabel said warmly. "We're here as friends." Graham stepped inside, careful not to let the wind follow him. "Malik," he said, "this is for your grandmother." Beatrice appeared in the hallway, regal despite the oxygen tubes and sweater with one sleeve rolled up. She took in the scene. Graham Thornfield, billionaire, his pregnant wife, the nurse with the portable tank, and her grandson, standing tall, standing still. Her face was unreadable. "So," she said finally, "these are the airplane folks." Graham nodded. "Yes, ma'am, that would be us." Beatrice's eyes narrowed. "You look more nervous than a sinner in church." Graham chuckled, a bit too loudly. Isabel elbowed him gently. "Well," Beatrice said, stepping forward, "let's see if your manners are as good as your suits. Come in. Shoes off. Don't track snow on my floor, and don't you dare say no to second helpings." They gathered in the small living room. Beatrice sat in her recliner, facing them like a queen receiving guests. Malik and Isabel sat on the couch. Graham stood for a moment before Beatrice motioned toward the only other chair. "You can sit, son. The chair won't judge your tax bracket." Dinner was lively. Beatrice grilled them like a Senate committee. She wanted to know where Graham grew up, what Isabel did before she married him, what kind of baby names they were considering, what their intentions were, not just with Malik, but with her neighborhood. "You want to fix things?" she asked, cutting her chicken with military precision. "You think money's enough?" "No," Graham said honestly, "but it's a start. And we're not here to fix, we're here to support." Beatrice studied him, then looked at Isabel. "You believe that too?" Isabel nodded. "I watched your grandson save my life with nothing but his voice and his brain. He didn't have equipment. He didn't have a diploma. But he had what mattered most, clarity and compassion." Silence followed. Then Beatrice leaned back. "Good answer. Now pass the cobbler." After dinner, the nurse helped Beatrice to her room to rest. Graham stood by the window, looking out over the cracked sidewalks and worn brick buildings. "You've lived here your whole life?" he asked Malik. Malik nodded. "Born in the back bedroom. Taught myself anatomy at that table. Held my mother's hand on that couch when she passed." Graham turned to face him. "I can't imagine. You shouldn't have to, but people here do. Every day." Graham swallowed hard. "This health initiative, it has to be more than a PR move," Malik said, finishing his thought. "No ribbon cutting, no camera crews, real doctors," Isabel added, joining them. "Real patients, real voices." Malik looked between them. "I don't care if my name goes on the door, but hers better." He pointed toward the closed bedroom door. Graham nodded. "It will. The Beatrice Dawson Community Health Center. Full service, no insurance, no problem. Specialists on site, partnerships with med schools, transportation included. Malik exhaled slowly. It sounded like the release of a decade's worth of pressure. Then he said, "Good, because if you mess this up, she'll haunt you." They all laughed. As the night wound down, Beatrice emerged one last time. She walked up to Graham and Isabel with slow, deliberate steps. Her eyes, sharp and clear, found Graham's. "I misjudged you," she said. "You listened. That's rare in your world." Then she turned to Isabel. "Have a safe delivery. That baby's lucky already." Finally, to Malik, "You done good, baby." Malik's throat tightened. He couldn't speak. He just nodded. At the door, Graham hesitated, then extended his hand. "This isn't the end. This is the beginning." Malik looked at the hand, then shook it. It better be. 6 months later, the doors to the Beatrice Dawson Community Health Center swung open. Sunlight spilled across the new tile floors. People came in waves, grandmothers on walkers, mothers with strollers, teenagers with chronic coughs. They came not for charity. They came to be seen. A young receptionist greeted every patient with a smile. The intake forms were simple. The signage was in 3 languages. The waiting room had plants, real ones, and local art on the walls. No one was turned away. No one was rushed. No one was invisible. In the back corner office, Malik Dawson sat at a desk that once belonged to his high school biology teacher. On the wall hung 2 things: a framed letter of acceptance to Columbia University's pre-med program, and a photo of his grandmother, Beatrice, smiling from her recliner, holding a peach cobbler like a trophy. A knock came at the door. It was Dr. Chen, the new OB-GYN. "Your 2P, Mem. Patient canceled," she said. "You've got a moment if you want to step into the welcome tour." Malik nodded. He followed her down the corridor. In the main hallway, media buzzed quietly in the background. But this wasn't a press stunt. There were no red carpets, just real people getting real care because someone finally chose to listen. Malik spotted them near the mural, the one painted by local teens, Graham and Isabel Thornfield, and in Isabel's arms, a newborn, swaddled in lavender, her cheeks full, her lungs strong, her eyes bright. "Hey," Malik said, softly. Graham looked up. He wasn't wearing a suit today, just jeans and a sweater. "More man than mogul now?" "Malik," Graham said, beaming. "You made this happen." Malik shook his head. "She made this happen." He pointed to the mural. Painted there, in soft earth tones and gold leaf, was Beatrice Dawson, arms outstretched over a street filled with families. Underneath, in bold letters, "Knowledge is placed where it's needed." Beatrice Dawson. Isabel stepped forward, offering the baby. "Would you like to hold her?" Malik hesitated, then nodded. Carefully, he took the child into his arms. She was warm, light, and squirming. "What's her name?" he asked. Isabel and Graham exchanged a glance. "B," she said. "Beatrice Elena Thornfield. After the woman who saved my life and the young man who saved my soul." Malik couldn't speak. Tears rose unbidden. He blinked them away, but one slipped through anyway. He looked down at the baby. "I'll make sure you grow up in a world where people care more about your heart than your zip code." Nearby, a nurse brought in Beatrice's old oxygen tank, retired now, cleaned and polished, repurposed into a planter in the clinic's community garden. a symbol of the past, rooted in new life. Outside, a group of school children passed the clinic on their walk home. One boy pointed. "That's where the airplane doctor works." He told his friend, "My mom said he's going to fix Grandma's knees." "Can he do that?" the other asked. The first boy shrugged. "Guess we'll find out." Malik handed the baby back to Isabel. She curled immediately into her mother's chest. He looked at Graham, who clapped a hand on his shoulder. "What you asked for," Graham said, voice thick, "was the one thing I never thought I'd be grateful to give accountability." Malik nodded, and community. As the sun began to dip low over Creston Hill, the health center bustled with laughter, footsteps, and hope, a hope no longer heavy, because it was no longer carried alone. Not far away, in the window of apartment 4B, a photo of Malik and Beatrice sat beside the plants on the sill. A candle flickered nearby. Not mourning, but memory. A reminder. That transformation doesn't begin with money or policy or power. It begins with one voice, spoken at 35,000 feet, when the world wasn't listening. As the doors of the Beatrice Dawson Community Health Center opened, it wasn't just a building. It was a promise kept, a promise born not from wealth, but from the courage of a teenager who refused to be overlooked, and the humility of a billionaire who finally chose to see. This story began in turbulence, not just in the skies, but in the quiet storm of assumptions, bias, and invisible lines drawn between classes and colors. But it ends here with a baby named for a woman who raised her grandson on wisdom, grit, and sweet potato pie, with a neighborhood that now has doctors who listen, doors that stay open, and hope that finally feels real. Malik Dawson didn't ask for fame. He didn't want a spotlight. He asked for dignity, for his grandmother, for his neighbors, for everyone who's ever been told you don't belong. And in doing so, he made all of us ask a harder question. What are we doing with the privileges we have? If this story moved you, if you believe that no one should be judged by their appearance, their zip code, or the balance in their bank account, then please like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories that remind us what it means to be human. We'll see you next time. And remember, kindness saves lives.